At my dad's funeral, my sister-in-law said I should sit in the back with the staff. Minutes later, my ex-boss walked in and said, "Funny, she owns half of my company now. Because my brother is afraid I'll fire him next." So this happened a few months ago, but the fallout is still unfolding. I, 38 female, had been estranged from my family for years, mostly due to my brother Holden, 43 male, and his wife Coraline, 40 female. Long story short, I left our small town in North Carolina to build my own life, and after a lot of hard work, I did just that. I'm now a majority stakeholder in a cybersecurity firm, which, funny enough, my brother now works for. He didn't know that until my dad's funeral. That day, Coraline tried to humiliate me. My old boss, now working for me, publicly reminded her who I am. Now my brother's marriage is unraveling and he's terrified I'm going to fire him. I'm not sure what to do, but after years of being treated like an outsider, I'm finally in control. Not because I planned revenge. Just because I stopped letting them define who I am. Holden and I used to be close, but things shifted somewhere between me winning a scholarship to Stanford and starting my first business. At first, he was proud. I could tell he liked telling people his little sister was out in Silicon Valley. But that pride dried up when my first app got acquired. And when I sold my second company for 7 figures before I hit 30, he stopped calling completely. It was subtle at first, missed holidays, excuses. Then came the real blow. Our dad had a stroke during the pandemic. I offered to come home to help. Holden said no. His exact words were, "We've got it under control." That meant he had it under control. Which really meant Coraline had taken the reins. Coraline and I never got along. She married Holden when I was in grad school, and even then, she gave off this air of cool indifference, like I was some charity case or a messy phase in my brother's life. She once called me the family wildcard at Thanksgiving, like I was some troubled teen instead of the only one who paid off her student loans without help. Anyway, I stayed away. I sent Christmas cards. I called Dad when I could. But the divide kept growing. The last time I saw them before the funeral was 5 years ago. Dad invited me back for his birthday. I flew in, brought a bottle of wine from Napa, and tried to be polite. It ended with Coraline accusing me of flaunting my success, and Holden telling me that people like me forget where they come from. I left before dessert. That was that. Then Dad died. A heart attack in the middle of his morning walk. No signs. No warning. Just like that, gone. I flew into Raleigh-Durham the morning of the funeral. Rented a car. Wore a black suit. I didn't expect a warm welcome. I just wanted to say goodbye. The church was packed when I got there, First Presbyterian, the same one we went to as kids. The smell of old wood and lilies made my throat tight. I walked in through the main entrance, looking for a place to sit. Most of the front rows were filled with family, friends, and coworkers. That's when Coraline stood up, just enough so I could see her, and said quietly, but not too quietly, "The front is for immediate family. Staff sits in the back." I froze. For a second, I actually thought she meant someone behind me. Then I realized, no, she meant me. My heels clicked on the wood floor as I turned toward the back. That's when the doors opened behind me. Damien Carr, my former boss and now the face of Carr Tech, the firm I recently acquired a 51% stake in, walked in. He saw me, smiled, and said loudly enough for Coraline and Holden to hear, "Funny. She owns half my company now." He patted my shoulder. Then turned to Holden, who'd finally looked up. "You work for her, don't you? Guess you'll want to stay on her good side." You could have cut the silence with a blade. I sat down in the third row. Not the back. Not the front. Just somewhere that felt separate. The funeral went on. The eulogy was nice, but it hurt. Because as they talked about Dad's legacy, his work, his family, I realized I was never going to hear him say goodbye. And even if I had, it probably wouldn't have fixed everything. After the service, there was a graveside ceremony. That's when Coraline approached me again. She waited until the priest had walked away. "You didn't have to embarrass us," she hissed. I looked at her. I didn't say anything. "You brought him," she said, nodding toward Damien. "You planned this." I shook my head. "He was on the guest list. Pallbearer. Dad liked him." She scoffed, then stepped closer. "Whatever stunt you think you pulled," I cut her off. "Coraline, I came to bury my father. You came to start a fight." Holden joined us a minute later, looking tired. "Can we not do this here?" I shrugged. "Fine." He looked at me then. Really looked. "Is it true? You bought into Cartech?" I nodded. "I'm the majority shareholder. Have been for 4 months." His mouth opened, then closed. "You're not going to fire me," he said, more a statement than a question. "I haven't decided," I said. That was the last real conversation we had that day. I flew back to Chicago that night. My assistant had rescheduled my meetings, and when I stepped into the office Monday morning, I tried to return to normal. But things weren't normal. Holden emailed me a week later. Subject line: "Can we talk?" We set up a Zoom. He looked older than I remembered. Less like the golden child, more like a man who'd been cornered by life. He started with an apology, of sorts. He said Dad had gotten bitter after the stroke. That Coraline had taken over because she had to. That he was sorry for how they pushed me out. I listened. Then he asked what his future looked like at Cartech. I told him honestly, "You're good at what you do. But I need to know you're not going to hamper things just because I'm involved." He nodded. "Fair." I offered him a lateral move, same salary, different department. He accepted without a fight. Coraline didn't. She called me 2 days later. Left a voicemail dripping with fury. "You think you're the queen now? You broke this family apart." I didn't call back. 3 weeks later, Holden told me she'd filed for separation. When Holden told me Coraline had filed for separation, I didn't know what to say. Part of me had always known their marriage was more about appearance than substance, matching luxury cars, perfectly posed holiday cards, a front row seat at every local gala, but I never thought she'd walk away so easily. Or maybe it wasn't easy. Maybe she just couldn't stand the thought of me being a part of her life again, even tangentially. "She said I should have stood up for her," Holden said during a late-night call. At the funeral. I was sitting on my balcony in Chicago, watching the city flicker under a layer of fog. "Well," I said, "you didn't stand up for anyone." That made him quiet. He didn't argue. He started calling more after that. Not about work, we had managers for that, but about the small, personal things. The dog he'd adopted to fill the silence in the house. The new coffee shop that opened in downtown Winston-Salem. Old memories about our dad, the good ones, the ones we never got to talk about when we were too busy blaming each other for everything that fell apart. For the first time in years, it felt like we were slowly becoming siblings again. Not the kind you see in Hallmark movies, but real ones. Messy, hesitant, guarded. Still, there was tension at work. When I acquired Cartech, I did it through a shell company and a venture group. No one but Damien and a handful of lawyers knew it was me until after the ink was dry. That was intentional. I didn't want Holden to accuse me of buying power just to punish him. I bought Cartech because it was a smart investment. The fact that Holden worked there was, at first, just an uncomfortable coincidence. But once I had control, the awkwardness couldn't be ignored. I didn't involve myself in day-to-day management, that was Damien's role. But everyone in the leadership team knew I had the final say. Holden, though competent, was struggling under the weight of the gossip. I heard rumors that Coraline had gone to several people in the firm before the separation and warned them about me, said I was unstable, unpredictable, hell-bent on taking Holden down. That she'd even tried to pitch the board a story about how I used family leverage to make the acquisition. All lies. After she left Holden, her narrative shifted. Now she was telling people I was jealous. That I'd always resented her and was using my money to hurt her. I ignored it. Until she showed up at a leadership mixer hosted by one of Karteka's largest partners in Charlotte. I wasn't even supposed to be there, but I flew down last minute when Damien called and said he had a bad feeling. She walked into the event like she owned the place, wearing a deep red dress and a rehearsed smile. Said she was there to support her husband's company. Only. She wasn't his wife anymore. Holden was there too, but he kept his distance. When Coraline tried to approach the execs from our new European partner, I stepped in. Coraline, I said. This is a private event. She smiled with all teeth. So's your vendetta. Is that why you're here? To create a scene? She blinked, feigning innocence. I just wanted to make sure the company is in good hands. You know. Real professionals. Damien walked up behind me and put a hand on my shoulder. Security's on standby if you want her gone. I turned back to Coraline. Leave. This isn't your stage anymore. She opened her mouth to say something else, probably something cruel, something sharp. But the look on my face must have warned her not to. She left. 2 days later, I received an anonymous complaint filed with Karteka's ethics board, alleging that I had used personal bias to assign a promotion to a friend. It was complete fiction. We traced the IP address to Coraline's boutique design firm, which she ran out of a rented co-working space in Greensboro. Holden denied knowing anything about it. I believed him. But I told him something important on our next call. I need you to understand something, I said. You and I can try to rebuild what we lost. But your ex-wife doesn't get to keep throwing bombs at my life. He sighed. I get it. I'll talk to her. Do more than talk, I said. Draw the line. He didn't say anything, but he didn't hang up either. By fall, the dust started to settle. Coraline's business was struggling. Rumor was, she'd spent too much on branding and too little on building actual client relationships. She tried to attach Dad's name to her firm, something like Halstead and Company. Even though she'd never legally taken our family name. My lawyers sent a cease and desist within 48 hours. That hit her harder than I expected. She went online, Facebook, Instagram, even Twitter, posting long, vague, emotionally manipulative rants about power-hungry women destroying families and what it's like to be betrayed by those you welcomed into your heart. I didn't respond. But Holden did. He made a quiet, respectful statement on LinkedIn, of all places. Just a simple note about respecting professional boundaries and not tolerating harassment or misinformation, even from people he used to care about. That told me everything I needed to know. He was choosing a different path. Not mine. Not hers. Just his own. We didn't suddenly become best friends. We didn't start vacationing together or calling each other every day. But something shifted. He invited me to Thanksgiving, just him and a couple of friends. No Coraline. No pressure. No drama. I went. We made dinner together. Burned the pie. Talked about Dad. Talked about nothing. And for the first time in years, it didn't feel like we were walking on eggshells. It felt like we were healing. But healing doesn't erase the scars. And as much as I wanted to believe Coraline was fading into the rearview, part of me knew she wasn't done yet. Something about the way she disappeared from social media in December. It didn't feel like surrender. It felt like planning. The quiet didn't last. By early January, I started receiving emails through my company's general inquiry inbox, strange, oddly worded messages asking if Kartek had ties to fraudulent corporate activity. They came from untraceable, masked IPs routed through overseas servers. At first, I thought it was spam. But then Damien forwarded me an article link from a niche industry blog that covered M&A news in the tech sector. The post claimed that Karteka's most recent acquisition had roots in family nepotism and was currently under internal ethical review. It was riddled with vague language and subtle digs, but the real kicker was the sourcing. It cited an anonymous but reputable source with close ties to Kartek leadership. There was no doubt in my mind who planted it. Coraline was on a new path, one she couldn't fight legally or socially anymore, so she decided to go through the back channels. Gossip. Whispers. Character assassination by 1,000 paper cuts. It didn't hit major news outlets, thankfully. But in the circles where reputation matters, it had ripple effects. We lost a minor investor. One of our international vendors paused negotiations. Damien, ever the steady hand, told me not to react too fast. "This is a flare, not a fire," he said. "Let's see how long she can keep it up before she burns herself out." But it did bother me. Not just because it was disruptive, but because, for all my confidence and self-assuredness, I wasn't bulletproof. Coraline still knew exactly which nerves to touch. Her accusations were vague enough to seem plausible and venomous enough to cast a shadow. Holden called me the week the article came out. I could tell from his voice he'd already read it. "I confronted her," he said. "She swore it wasn't her." "Of course she did," I replied. "I believe you," he added quickly. "But she's unraveling." I didn't ask why he was still talking to her, but I didn't have to. They weren't divorced yet. The papers had been filed, but it takes time, mediation, splitting assets, untangling shared finances. They still had mutual friends, lawyers, and a house being sold. It wasn't clean. "She's been telling people I torment her," he said quietly. I sat down when he said it. "What?" "Nothing physical," he added. "She's not claiming that. Just that I was emotionally distant. That I controlled her." I didn't know how to respond. Coraline had always known how to reshape a narrative. And while I didn't doubt Holden had his faults, I also knew what kind of games Coraline played when her back was against the wall. "I'm sorry," I said finally. "I should have stopped this years ago," he said. "When she started pushing you out of the family. When she told Mom you were dangerous." That one hit hard. Because I'd never known why my mother stopped returning my calls the last few years of her life. I'd left dozens of voicemails. I'd sent flowers on her birthday. But after the stroke, after Dad started slipping, she just shut me out. "You think she poisoned that well too?" I asked. "I know she did." He sounded exhausted. Beaten down. But honestly. And honesty was more than we'd had in a long time. That night, I opened a folder on my computer that I hadn't touched in months. It contained every screenshot, email, and legal document tied to Coraline's actions against me and Kartek, including the planted blog article and the fake ethics complaint. I wasn't planning to sue, but I was done playing nice. The next morning, I forwarded everything to my personal attorney with a short note: "Time to have this conversation." The weeks that followed were tense. My lawyer reached out to Coraline with a cease and desist letter, more aggressive than the branding one we'd sent before. It outlined reputational harm, false statements, and her attempts to interfere with Kartek operations. There were no threats, just a clear line in the sand. She didn't respond through counsel. Instead, she posted a cryptic Instagram story 3 days later, a photo of her standing in front of our old family home, with the caption, "It always comes back around." She knew I'd see it. She wanted me to. I didn't take the bait. But I did call Holden again. "She's not letting go," I told him. "I know," he said. "She came to my office last week." "What?" "She said she wanted to talk. Asked if there was any way to reset the narrative." Those were her words. "Did you throw her out?" "Not right away," he admitted. I listened. I guess I wanted to see if she meant it. And? She doesn't. She's still playing the victim. I could feel that old anger rising, not at Holden, but at the way Coraline always managed to twist the world around her like a snake coiling around a branch. "I want you to hear this from me first," I said after a pause. "I've initiated the process to file a civil claim if she keeps escalating." "You're suing her?" "Not yet. But I won't let her keep defaming me, Holden. She's crossed every line." He didn't argue. Just said, "If it comes to that." "I understand." And for the first time, I believed him. By March, Coraline went quiet again. No posts. No emails. No mysterious industry articles. It was unnerving. Because Coraline didn't vanish, she lurked. I started getting subtle questions from mutual acquaintances back home. Not overt attacks, but little remarks like, "I heard there's been a lot of drama between you and your brother's ex, hope you're okay." Which meant she was still whispering in corners. Still spinning her story. Still laying bricks in some path I couldn't yet see. So I stayed alert. Hold my ground. And quietly began building my own narrative. Because if Coraline wanted a war, I wasn't going to give her a battlefield. I was going to give her silence. The kind of silence that suffocates. Spring came slowly to Chicago. The cold lingered longer than usual, as if the weather itself didn't know how to move on. I felt the same way. I was still checking in with Holden weekly. Nothing too deep, mostly work updates or simple "you good" texts that sometimes led to hour-long calls. We didn't discuss Coraline much anymore. It was an unspoken rule between us: say what's necessary, but don't let her back into the center of the conversation. She'd lived rent-free in our lives long enough. But she wasn't finished. I found out about her next move from an HR rep. It started as an odd request, a background check flag on Holden's new departmental hire, a woman named Brielle Langdon. She'd applied for an assistant operations coordinator position, a fairly mid-level role, nothing unusual. But HR flagged inconsistencies in her work history and flagged a potential conflict of interest. I asked Damien to dig further. Turned out Brielle wasn't real. The name, the credentials, the references, all fabricated. Whoever built the identity had gone through significant effort, including a full LinkedIn profile, fake professional endorsements, and a resume designed to blend in perfectly with Karteka's needs. We cross-checked IPs from the application logs. Same masking technique used in the anonymous complaint Coraline had filed months ago. This wasn't just character defamation anymore. This was infiltration. I sat with the report in my hand, reading and rereading it in disbelief. She was trying to get someone inside the company. Into Holden's team, specifically. Why? To spy? To collect information for a lawsuit? To find some thread she could twist into another wrongdoing? I didn't know. But what I did know was that this was no longer a story about a bitter ex-sister-in-law spreading rumors. This was targeted. Deliberate. Dangerous. I called Holden that night. He answered on the second ring. "I need you to listen carefully," I said. "And I need you to not get defensive." He didn't interrupt, which was a sign he already knew something was wrong. I explained the entire situation, the flagged hire, the fake name, the linked IPs. I could hear him breathing, steady and slow, like he was trying not to lose it. "She was in my office last week," he said finally. "Who?" "Coraline. Said she wanted to return some of my stuff. Asked me if I was hiring." "She asked about your team?" "Yeah." "Why?" I didn't answer right away. Because he already knew why. "She was fishing," he said quietly. "Trying to see if she could slip someone in." I could practically hear the guilt crawling through the phone. I should have shut the door in her face. "She's your ex-wife," I said. "Not your prisoner. You gave her an inch and she tried to bury a blade in it." "I'll handle it." "No," I said. "You won't." He went silent again. I wasn't being cruel, I was being clear. Because this wasn't just about him anymore. Coraline had moved her chess pieces into our business, and that changed the rules. The next day, my legal team sent Coraline a formal pre-litigation notice, a document outlining digital impersonation, fraud, reputational hampered, and business interference. No more warnings. No more silence. We weren't bluffing anymore. And we served it to her publicly, through her office. The same boutique design studio she'd once posted Instagram stories from with quotes like, "Success is the best revenge." Guess it depends on whose success we're talking about. 3 days after the notice, Holden called me again. This time, he sounded different. Resigned. She showed up at my apartment, he said. What? She wasn't hysterical, just fake calm. Like she'd rehearsed the whole thing. Told me she's being unfairly persecuted. That she's broke. That you're destroying her for sport. I said nothing. I told her I believed you. That what she did was indefensible. What did she say? She accused me of picking sides. Said I'd always been jealous of her success, that she was the real reason Dad respected me. I winced. Coraline always knew where to dig. She left crying, he added. Or pretending to cry. I don't know anymore. You okay? I asked. I'm tired, he said. But yeah. I think I'm finally free of her. I wanted to believe that. I really did. But Coraline didn't strike me as the kind of woman who cried and disappeared. She was the kind who planned, who adapted, who circled back when you least expected it. And as I sat there that night, sipping cold tea, rereading the incident reports, I realized something I hadn't let myself admit before. This wasn't just about her trying to ruin me. This was about her trying to reclaim control. Over her narrative. Over Holden's legacy. Over mine. And the only way she knew how to do that was to burn everything she couldn't own. The letter shook her. We could tell because Coraline went dark, no social media posts, no new business inquiries through her site, and most notably, no further attempts to mess with Kartaka's operations. Even our internal legal team, who had been preparing for a battle, noticed the silence. For the first time in nearly a year, I exhaled. But I didn't relax. See, Coraline didn't stop because she was afraid of legal consequences. She stopped because she was regrouping. And I wasn't going to wait around for the next attack. So I decided it was time to take away the one thing she still had, her illusion of influence. It started quietly. I asked my marketing director to do an audit of Coraline's business footprint. She still ran her design firm, but it was barely afloat. No clients listed on her portfolio, no press mentions in over a year, and several online reviews that were, shall we say, suspiciously glowing, yet poorly written. Likely self-posted. I contacted one of the co-working spaces where her studio was listed. I posed as a potential client seeking a designer who specialized in legacy estate interiors. The receptionist told me Coraline had vacated her space 2 months ago. So, her firm was really just an Instagram page and a Squarespace template now. Good. Next, I contacted 3 local business journals, anonymously at first, and submitted a tip with supporting documentation about Coraline's fake job applications, the planted stories, and an impersonation attempt at Kartak. The reporters weren't interested in the wrongdoing. But one of them got curious enough to follow up with Holden. That's when things got interesting. The reporter wasn't trying to destroy her. She was writing a piece on small businesses and social media manipulation. A quiet exposé. She asked Coraline for a comment. Coraline declined, but not before trying to claim that Kartak had hacked her accounts, which only made her look worse. The piece went live in a mid-tier online business journal 2 weeks later. It didn't name her outright, but anyone who knew her knew who it was about. The fallout was swift. 2 former clients of hers, both of whom had quietly left bad projects unfinished with her, posted about their experience in the comments section. Then came the most satisfying moment. Holden forwarded me a link. It was from a private Facebook group of North Carolina entrepreneurs. Someone had reshared the article and captioned it, PSA, think twice before hiring self-proclaimed legacy designers who can't deliver on contracts. Some of us learned the hard way. Underneath were dozens of comments. Business owners. Former clients. Even a local realtor who said Coraline had once tried to charge her $5,000 for a 2-hour staging consultation disappeared with the deposit. That was all it took. Her entire image, the curated identity she'd spent years maintaining, cracked in public view. Not from me. Not from a lawsuit. From the truth catching up to her. And the best part? I never had to lift a finger after that initial nudge. Coraline's own behavior unraveled her. Her own lies eroded her credibility. By summer, she'd deactivated her Instagram. Her website was gone. And the boutique design firm that had once been her pride? Folded. Quietly, without fanfare. Holden told me later that she moved in with her cousin somewhere in South Carolina, trying to figure things out. I didn't need to know more. So, how did it end for me and Holden? Honestly? Surprisingly well. He stayed on at Cartech, still on a different team, still working under someone else, and he earned his place. He never asked for special treatment. He never played the family card. He just did his job. We're not best friends, but we're family again. And for the first time in over a decade, I spent Christmas with someone from my bloodline who didn't make me feel like an intruder. He came up to Chicago. We ate Chinese food in our pajamas and watched bad holiday movies. And when he left, he hugged me without hesitation. It wasn't perfect. But it was peaceful. And as for me? I didn't burn Coraline's world down. She did that herself. I just stopped cleaning up after her. And that, in the end, was the most satisfying revenge of all. I let her be exactly who she is. And the world finally saw it, too.